Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 40/40 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 40/40. We're so excited to jump into today's episode, but before we do, here's a quick word from one of our sponsors.
Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the 40/40 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod, featuring host for this episode. That's me, Osama Dahud, joined by 40/40 podcast supreme leader Khaled Abdallah. How's it going?
It's going good, man.
Good. Well, look, what I wanted to talk about today is a topic that among sports fans is complete fodder. I don't know if this is a cheap opportunity to talk about the soup du jour, if you will. DeAndre Hopkins took a deal with the Tennessee Titans, and that sounds like, I don't know, he could have gone to the Bills, someone who might need an elite wide receiver given how good he is. And I started thinking about other athletes that are they in it for the money? Are they in it for winning? Is it something else for the love of the game? Things like that. So I want to go through these athletes that what constitutes that? Like when is it clear to fans and critics and maybe even other players that you're in it for the money or you're all about winning? And what defines that? Are we the arbiters of that? Not really, but we're going to pretend to be today. Is that fair?
I think that's fair for sure.
Like, what do you think about this topic before we get into it? Like, is this something you think about? Do you look at players on teams you root for and think about them like this? Like, what's your take?
I think when I was younger, maybe a bit more naive, I was like, yo, it's all about the glory. It's all about winning. Nothing matters more than winning. And then I think as I became an adult and I had real bills to pay, it wasn't just like my cell phone bill and $1,500 for a used car. True story. I bought my first car for about $1,500 in 2004. So I have real bills, a mortgage, a family to support, kids to pay for, childcare. I was like, man, a lot of money would solve, 80% of my problems. So I think that's when my thinking started to change and my understanding to use the common phrase for guys chasing the bag, made more sense to me. I still think it's admirable to prioritize winning over chasing the bag, but I'm not mad when guys do it. I'll put it like that.
Sure. And we're not saying that chasing the money is a bad thing, but there are reasons why someone will get put into that category, and in some cases possibly deserved. And I'm hinting at some people that I might think so. I might become a hot take artist today to some degree. I might show my biases. Speaking of first cars, mine was also $1,500. It was a 1989 Volvo 740 intercooler white station wagon.
Did that get
I got it in
2006?
Yeah, that thing was tough though. You punch it, it'll punch you back. That thing was made of vibranium, bro.
I think I'm picturing it. I know exactly what car you're talking about, and I could totally picture that. That's amazing.
It's bulletproof. Okay, so first topic. Let's break down the difference between these two things. Like when an athlete is in it for the money, in it for the winning. And kind of the paradigm shift that we see in sports today because there's so much money out there. So when I think about athletes getting paid, you look at sports history. Let's do some sports history here. It's a sports history podcast. I believe Michael Jordan, for example, who we'll talk about maybe once or twice here, it made $94 million in his career, which is good, right? Cerebral winner, we'll say that time and time again. He also, I believe, was taken advantage of. He was offered a $25 million contract in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Magic Johnson was offered a $25 million contract in 1980 for 25 years. $1 million a year. They were furious at the time at the size of his contract, even though it was some Chelsea Football Club amortization scheme. Wink, wink. I know you're a Chelsea fan. So I look at that, and the money today is just so different. it's understandable when an athlete looks at that and says, this is generational wealth versus what they used to get. There are trailblazers to some degree that didn't really have a choice, but they had to go through these bad contracts, quote unquote, or contracts that didn't meet their actual worth or the value of the quality of their play that they brought to their club. And this can apply to many sports. We'll just use basketball because this money has only been around for about 25 years or so. That's been so game changing. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think basketball is the great example. I mean, you talked about Magic with that $25 million contract. It sounded like an absurd number at the time, but then, it was $1 million a year, which is, it's not chump change, but it's not indicative of the value that he brought to the Lakers, to the league, to basketball in general. And I think that there's a reason why a lot of these old basketball heads are really upset at some of the numbers that were thrown around. I mean, we're going to talk about one of the poster boys for this. I mean, he's a great player in Damian Lillard, but he's scheduled to make like $60 million in a couple of years. And that's, you said Michael Jordan made $94 million his whole career. I mean, Dame Lillard's been in the league for 11 years. He's already made $250 million just off basketball, not including the endorsements, not including anything like that. And I talked about it on the short that I did last week. So the numbers are astronomical. And I mean, it's not quite as extreme as this, but I think of it in terms of like, those industrial revolution workers in the 1900s or the first unions that came about. And it like, these guys were the ones that decided that, we need a minimum wage. We need a 40-hour work week. We need, bargaining agreements and labor agreements and things like that. And you can take that same line of thinking and you apply it to sports, because back in the day when there weren't these labor agreements and bargaining agreements, you could do stuff like $1 million a year over 25 years. There was no limit set on these contracts, for better or worse. So Jerry Buss or some of these other owners who had a little more foresight, I think I'm thinking about the Bulls when what they offered, was it a 7-year deal or a 9-year deal or something to Scottie Pippen, and he ended up taking it and complained about being underpaid and stuff like that. But they used to take advantage of these guys, basically. It sounds kind of funny to say that you're being taken advantage of, being paid $1 million a year, but it is that's exactly what's happening, because you're not being paid according to the value that you bring. So I get why people are upset, but it's only fair that you're paid what for the value that you bring to the league and to your team.
Yeah, I think basketball is the perfect example to use for this, just because some other sports have been around for a while, and the money in basketball is just so much greater than some of these other sports like football, where the contracts are rarely fully guaranteed. You'll see someone like Christian McCaffrey getting, I don't know, 40-some million dollars guaranteed, and then Grant Williams has like $80 million guaranteed or something like that, or Dylan Brooks.
Have you seen those memes?
This is very
of like, it's
no. What's
to use your example, it would be like, Grant Williams and Christian McCaffrey are in a club, and Grant looks at Christian, he's like, "Don't worry about it, I'll cover the bill," or "Don't worry, it's on me." Just because it's funny money in the NBA, of course, compared to the NFL. You can talk about roster size and the dangers that come with playing football and all that. But yeah, it's those are hilarious to me.
And then obviously, like, the money in soccer has been unlimited for a very long time. It's very different. That's a totally different global game. The money there is crazy. Baseball also has had massive contracts. So some of those conversations have been around a lot longer. I think basketball is caught up given the value of the sport. Let's turn it over to the winning side of it. So when you look at winning, why do we call them winners? I mean, there's a lot of winners out there, right? There's definitely, and they're not nonprofits, they're not charities, so to speak, when they sign their contracts. We look at someone like Tom Brady, the greatest winner in football, sacrificed. Is that the only example of winning, or do we only use him because he took less money and the Patriots just signed a bunch of shopping carts as wide receivers that they found lying around that went to Kent State and James Logan High School and or whatever? What else is out there? I mean, are we being are we only worshiping Tom Brady because he won 7 titles? Do you have to win a bunch of titles to be all about winning?
I think so. I mean, it's ultimately sports is about winning, and it's about winning titles and trophies. And obviously, you can only have one winner at the end of every year. But over the course of your career, if you win a bunch of titles, you're a serial winner. Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, Derek Jeter, I don't know, all these guys. If you have multiple rings and you are, we'll say, one of the, I don't know, three to five best players on the team. Well, maybe not basketball 3 to 5, but yeah, I mean, you're going to get that title, and it's deservedly so. But the funny thing is about Brady is people talk about him sacrificing, but then they conveniently leave out the fact that his wife is a global supermodel, and she makes, I think she's worth maybe twice as much as him. So when he's taken
wait. So it's circumstantial for him. He just had an incredible support system and had the margin to take haircuts on his salary.
100%. I mean, we talk about some of these other guys, but it's true. I mean, think about it, right? If you are, I don't know, name any other quarterback that is not married to a supermodel. If you're Kirk Cousins, if you're Dak Prescott, if you're Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, and someone comes to you and says, hey, you know what? We want to give you $200 million. And you're not going to say no to that. You're not going to, I mean, you might think a little bit about, you know what, this might affect my team and the talent around me. It's going to make my job a little bit harder or a lot bit harder, but it's going to make my life a lot easier because I'm coming home with 200 million, or let's say 40 million a year. And then you're Tom Brady and you're like, we know he's insane. We know he's a sociopath. He's in that same category of Michael Jordan as, he has this huge chip on his shoulder. He wants to win at all costs. The guy has every quarterback memorized that was drafted ahead of him, 20, 30 years ago. So we know that he already has that mentality. And then he's like, you know what? I could take $15 million a year less, but my lifestyle won't change. My wife is still worth, $500-600 million. She has I think she has a makeup line, a lingerie line, all kinds of stuff. She's just printing money all over the world. So he's
a coffee table book worth more than a Mercedes.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's easier for him to do it. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve credit, but he has he had that safety net. He's not with her anymore, but now he can make 10x what he was making before doing. I think he has some insane contract with Fox Sports to do broadcasting. He doesn't have to get hit in the face to earn that money. So, yeah, let's give him credit, but let's also realize there's some circumstances around what Tom Brady was doing.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a rare, the selfless goat with the rich wife. Fair enough.
Exactly.
So I guess at one point is that clear that someone is in it for the money and is sacrificing, whether we're taking his all-time greats or not. The one I like to point to, the earliest example I can remember was Robinson Cano. Do you know who Robinson Cano is?
He played for the Marlins. He played for not the Marlins, the Mariners. Also played for the Yankees at some point as well.
Yep. Yeah, he was playing for the Yankees. He was one of the best players in the league. They were, he played for them from, I believe, 2005 to 2013. They won a title. And then he signs this 10-year, $240 million deal with the Mariners. Like, where'd you go, buddy? Like the Mariners had their glory days with Ken Griffey Jr. They had one of the best regular season of all time in the early 2000s. And then he just goes there and he's like, I'm just going to go live in Seattle. I'm going to leave New York and live in Seattle for this massive contract. And it was for me, that was my earliest memory of that was just for the money. That was, I'm going to take this payday. Goodbye, baseball. Goodbye, New York City. And I'm just going to take this generational wealth. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's the earliest example I can remember of someone going, nothing else really matters except this payday.
Yeah, I don't know if this was the earliest example, but it's one that came to mind as soon as you sent this topic over was Oscar, the midfielder, played for Chelsea, played for Brazil, Brazilian national. And this was, we're these days it's Saudi Arabia that's throwing around the funny money, right? They're offering $1 billion to Messi. They're signing Jordan, or they're trying to sign Jordan Henderson to incredible amounts of money. They're just throwing money around for fun. So I remember in 2016, 17, they offered this kid who was, a pretty good player. Not, I wouldn't say he was world class, maybe just on the edge, or he could have become world class. And he's a guy that, at 26, 27, you're like, all right, he's at a huge club at Chelsea. Maybe his next move, if he would make a move, would be to Barcelona, Real Madrid, like another step up kind of thing. Instead, he signs with a Chinese team because at that time they were throwing around insane amounts of money. So he leaves European football at the age of 27 and he signs basically the equivalent of, I think, $30 million a year for 4 years. So like $120 million contract with this club in China that no one has ever heard of. And fast forward 6-7 years later, he's still there. And he admitted that this move was 100% motivated by the financial aspect of it, by the money. He didn't pretend like, oh, it's a new challenge. Oh, I love Chinese food. I love Szechuan chicken. I want to go play in Shanghai. He's like, nah, they're offering me. And I read about his story. His dad died when he was really young. His mom couldn't work, so she would literally sew and make clothes in their house. So we're talking about dirt poor, like, barefoot in the street type poverty. And he sees this opportunity to make incredible, life-changing, generational wealth type money. He just said, I have to take it. And it cost him his place with the Brazilian national team. Because if you remember, he was a starter in the 2016 World Cup, and he hasn't played for them since 2017. It's not like he's gotten worse, but the national team was just like, well, if you're not going to take soccer seriously by playing in China, we're not going to take you seriously. And so he was probably the biggest example that came to mind when you sent me this topic.
Yeah, and Oscar in particular, I believe, was one of the first signings that triggered financial fair play in Europe. He was like 19 years old and went for 40 million pounds or something from wherever he was playing in Brazil. And Alex Ferguson saying, that's too much for a boy, however he talks. But I think another example, a little maybe more high profile in terms of status as a player, is Samuel Eto'o. Samuel Eto'o is a great player, striker for Barcelona, won the Champions League there, won the Champions League for Inter Milan. He played for Real Madrid. He was an incredible player and still in the height of his powers in like 2010 or something like that. He goes to, I can't even say the name of the team, Anji M
keep it with
in
Anji,
Russia.
Yeah.
Anji M.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And it was only a $35 million transfer fee. I think Fernando Torres went for like 3x that around the same time. But he was the highest paid soccer player in the world at $29 million a year. He was making more than Messi, more than Ronaldo. The only athlete that made more than him at the time was Alex Rodriguez, and he was making around $32 million. So he was still in his prime, and it was a clear cash grab. And he wasted 2 years there. And speaking of the regression in salary, he left about 2-3 years later. He went back to Chelsea, and he was only getting paid $4 million a year because he just lost his worth playing in Russia where no one was watching him. The games didn't mean anything. They weren't playing meaningful
he was playing in the Champions
football
League
anywhere else.
They made it to the Champions League, obviously, because of the cash that was injected into the club. So I would say his domestic football or domestic soccer, the one he was playing, was not very meaningful, but they're still in the Champions League. But you know what's funny is this club actually no longer exists. It was dissolved last year.
It's a tech company. It was just some tech company that came and went.
It just, it kind of like burned up like a phoenix, and it rose to the top of European soccer, and it produced a couple other big time players. I want to say Willian played there as well, maybe, but it's in Dagestan, and that's where Habib is from. So it's like not just Russia. You're not talking about Moscow, St. Petersburg. We're talking about like the far eastern part of Russia. I think it's like a 6-7 hour flight from London. So this is he couldn't go any further basically without playing in China or somewhere like that. So he went to the final frontier basically of European soccer. But I mean, probably for his career, it wasn't the best decision, but I'm sure his pockets aren't hurting as a result of it.
Yeah. I think Ronaldo comes to mind right now too. 37 years old or something like that, and he took $9 trillion to play in a league that you can't find on television anywhere. They're being broadcasted somewhere on Jupiter right now, and everyone's going to play there for the same reason. It's a wave of paydays. It's not a wave of, wow, look at the quality of competition in Saudi Arabia. It's, well, they're just giving away money over there because they want everyone to play there because it increases the value of the franchises there. And I think for their economy, foreign direct investment is important. That's neither here nor there. So circling back to the winning aspect of it. So where does someone here that's a little more borderline for me is Bradley Beal. And Bradley Beal, because he took the payday, understandably, it was a ridiculous $250 million guaranteed contract. And at the time, we talked about this on the SLS pod over a year ago that we used to do. And we're like, there's an enraged debate about how he took the money and didn't want to win, but it just was an unreasonable amount of money to turn down. Like, you could get offered 180 somewhere else or 150 somewhere, but it's $250 million. Like, what are you supposed? You would be insane to say, no, I'm a winner when, that's just a crazy contract. I did not fault him at all for taking that money. Now, I don't know if this is a flaw in the basketball system necessarily, where now he has a no trade clause that, oddly enough, a player of his caliber getting a no trade clause and he can ask out. Where does he stand? Is it, now he's about the winning more than the money? Or does he just want to win because he got, is he in purgatory? Where's Bradley Beal there?
It's funny that you said he's borderline. He is not borderline whatsoever to me. Bradley Beal, listen, he's always been, to me, he's like the poster boy, good stats, bad team guy. He's not a winner. I don't consider him. I wouldn't put him anywhere near that club. I wouldn't say he's even borderline. He's just always been about the money. And I mean, again, I don't fault him for doing it. You said he got I think he got the Supermax because he qualified for it because he was third team All NBA, which I think that is the real flaw in the basketball system, where your contract is determined essentially not by, kind of by what you do, but also just by journalists voting on whether you're, third team All NBA or not. So I don't know why someone that's first team All NBA qualifies for the same contract as third team All NBA and so on. But anyway, just the fact that, he couldn't say no to that money, but I think he's just always been about the money. Because if he really cared about winning, he could have taken a lesser deal somewhere else. Again, I don't fault him for taking the big money. And I think it was convenient for him that by some miracle or because of the sheer incompetence of the Wizards as a franchise before this current regime, which I think finally has a plan, the fact that they gave him a no trade clause, and then someone like Dame Lillard, who is probably 5x the player that he is and 5x the winner that he is, doesn't have a no trade clause. So it's just like, it's this consistent pattern of prioritizing the money over winning, taking the no trade clause, and then finally, when he has the opportunity, now he's like, okay, well, now I can have the best of both worlds because I secured my contract, I secured the bag, and now, because of how stupid the Wizards are as a franchise, I can now prioritize. It's not even prioritizing winning. It's like, well, I got paid. I might as well go to the best possible situation that'll have me and that can afford me, and that happens to be the Phoenix Suns, who are, another iteration of a super team in the NBA.
Fair enough. I think then I'm going to open up the Purgatory Club. We have several categories here. The first one is the Purgatory Club, and I believe the inaugural founding member of that club as of 2023 is Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard, I mean, does he really want to leave Portland given his behavior? He's really gone out of his way to try to make it seem like until as of summer 2023, he didn't want to ask out. Is this more about frustration with company direction, where he's just this highly paid employee and he's not happy with culture or corporate decision making? Like, should he go apply for a job at Apple instead? Like, where's Damian Lillard at? I think he's in purgatory, personally.
I agree. I mean, he's a winner. He hasn't won a title. He hasn't made the finals. But I think from his history of big time shots, of game winners, and his attitude and approach to the game, the dude's a winner. I think to his detriment, his attitude about winning may have hurt his career long term, or his legacy long term, I should say, because he's always been the dude that's like, oh, I'm not going to recruit anybody to Portland. I'm not going to try to build a super team here. If someone wants to come, they want to come. It's kind of like, I think Derrick Rose had a similar attitude, during those Bulls years when he may have been able to recruit LeBron or D Wade or somebody like that back in the day, but he had that same attitude of just like, no, if I win, I want to win on my terms. I want to win, with an organically built team, maybe was his idea. But at the same time, he didn't want to affect his legacy by leaving and by forcing a trade, at least earlier on in his career, or turning down a big extension. But at the same time, he's just getting insane amounts of money in his deals because he's so good. He's always been, I think he was all NBA 6 times in his career so far, whether first, second, or third team. So he's been able to. It's kind of like Bradley Beal, but with some winning mixed in as well, because he's been able to secure these huge contracts, but also take his team, on deep playoff runs and be somewhat legitimate contenders in the West. I mean, it's not his fault he kept running into Steph Curry. You know what I mean? So you can kind of fault him for that, but not really, because he just kept running into an all-time great. So I think he finally just had enough. I think I called it hubris. He had a lot of hubris early on in his career. He's like, no, I'm not recruiting anybody. No, I'm staying here. I'm 10 toes down in Portland. I'm a loyal guy. And he built his whole brand around that. And so at some point now, he's probably looking in the mirror. He's like, shit, I'm 34 years old. How many more years do I have of playing high-level basketball? And obviously, Portland is not in a position to contend right now. So I'm going to force my way to Miami, like reputation be damned, basically. But he's still making the money. So it's the same thing as Bradley Beal. He secured the bag. He's like, all right, I can't turn this deal down. I'm making $100 million over the next 2 years, but now I want a championship as well. So,
He's just earned a little more hubris, a little more clout because he's better. It seems like there are lines to be drawn. Like there seems to be a point where it's about the winning. Obviously, if you're a great player and you succeed, you're just going to be rewarded for it. It isn't about the money you're getting paid. You've just reached a certain status. If you're LeBron James, you should be earning $50 million a year. If you're Patrick Mahomes, you should get a $500 million contract, right? These are very difficult to argue with, but there is a line to be drawn, and there seem to be different categories of earning it, being all about the winning, and being all about the money. There's a couple of extremes. You have your maybe near the end of the hill Ronaldos and Messis that are taking different deals that they wouldn't normally take. They're career winners, but they're in their mid to late 30s and they're going to places like Jupiter to play soccer or Miami to play soccer and things like that. Where on the other end, you have someone like a Tim Duncan, who is the greatest at his position, and he's voluntarily taking discounts. He just doesn't give a shit about the salary. He's the most unselfish guy ever. And he's letting the Spurs just do whatever you want. This is my home. I'm always going to be here. I'm a founding member. I have stock in the company, whatever the case may be. That's another category of winning. Then you have like your Derek Jeters, where he's not even really regarded as a world-class shortstop, which is like the most difficult position to play on a baseball field. But he has this like unselfish style of play where he's not going for home runs. He learned there's like a Jeter-esque swing, or he can hit opposite field because he knows strategically, he knows where to hit the ball. He's a crafty player, and he just cared about winning, not about being a stats guy. You look at other shortstops were significantly better. He still won Gold Gloves. He was still a very accomplished player while he was in New York for 2 decades. So there's that kind of winner. And then you have your like modern day cerebral winners, your Steph Currys, your Michael Jordans, your et cetera, that earn their worth, that earn their status. Am I missing anyone else here? Are there other kinds of winners? While I'm laying these out, did I miss anything in terms of what constitutes a winner?
I'm glad you brought up Tim Duncan. This is not a new category or anything, but I'm glad you brought him up because I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did in San Antonio. I think just because of the nature of his personality and persona and stuff, he never cared about having a brand or anything like that. I think the category is kind of that purgatory category, but it's like the Dame Lillard, maybe Kevin Garnett, you can throw him in there. Basically guys that have shown that, okay, I care so much about this. I'm all about winning. I just haven't been able to win because of team circumstances, right? KG, he toiled away for a decade in Minnesota, and we know that franchise, especially back then, just all of the mistakes they made in the front office and things like that, they couldn't get out of their own way. And as a result, I don't think he ever won a playoff series. Maybe he won one playoff series his whole time there. Guys like Chris Bosh, you throw him in there too. Like they're obviously about the winning. They're the best player on some pretty good teams, but basketball is a team sport. They weren't able to go any further than that. Basically, they maximized what they had. And of course, Dame Lillard is in there too. He made a conference finals, but Portland, small market, Minnesota, small market, Toronto, technically a small market in terms of the NBA, where they're not attracting top tier free agents. So you're not having guys go there. So they're kind of winners without the winning, if that makes sense. So I would think that would be the category. It's like they have the attitude of a winner. They have the capability to be winners. Just the circumstances have not lined up for them to actually be winners.
Sure, that makes total sense. I agree with that. That's a good way to flesh out the purgatory club. I think there's one more winning category, and it applies to individual sports. I'm a huge fighting fan. I think that there are several all-time greats that you can say were all about winning. Muhammad Ali, obviously one of the best legacies, top 5 legacies in sports, fought a loaded heavyweight division from the 50s through the 70s, the 60s through 70s, something like that. He fought Sonny Liston and Joe Frazier and Ken Norton and George Foreman and just a murderer's row. He won 8 heavyweight world titles. So he's obviously clear winner, was all about that. George St. Pierre, a more recent example, fought everyone in front of him, cleaned out a welterweight division with BJ Penn and Matt Serra and Matt Hughes, and he fought so many great. He went up in weight. He came back from a hiatus and fought a much bigger Michael Bisping and kicked his ass too. And all he wanted to do was just fight the best. He wanted to be tested. You ever watch his interviews? He just wanted to get better all the time, and he just exuded that everywhere he went, in and out of the octagon. Amanda Nunes, trailblazer, beat Chris Cyborg, who just seemed to be the Terminator of female fighters, and didn't look back from there. Retired at 35 after avenging her only loss in the division at 35 years old, on top of the sport. So I think fighting is a really unique example of, because you have to, like, if you want to be successful, if you want to be great, you can't duck fights. You can't, you can't avoid anybody. To get paid, you have to beat other good fighters. There's no other way around it. You can be about the glamour, and here's my favorite example of being about the glamour: Conor McGregor, piece of shit asshole Conor McGregor, who as soon as he got tested and fought someone that truly hated him for who he was and beat him up in Khabib Nurmagomedov, I butchered that. Khabib, we'll just call him Khabib. I try
No
to power
Russian
through
names here.
like someone.
Yeah, we're struggling.
Yeah, like someone with phlegm. I tried to power through it. Didn't work. He got beat up. He got embarrassed. It was crazy. And then he took like a payday fight with Nate Diaz, who is a lifetime achievement award for I'll just fight anybody. Doesn't really matter. Just give me someone to fight. That's all I care about. I just have to fight because if I'm not fighting, I'm not being who I am, which is just a violent person. So these are the kinds of fights he took. He stopped fighting. He just started promoting whiskey and showing up behind bars and doing shadow boxing and just a clown show of expensive suits. This is obviously I care a little too much about this, but that's like an extreme example of someone who just wanted to be famous when the going got tough.
I noticed that you didn't list two of like, if you were going to go with winning in the literal sense, you didn't list two guys here, and Floyd Mayweather, who's 50-0, and Khabib, who's what is he 30-0, something like that, 29-0. So why didn't you list these guys?
Yep.
Is it because they ducked fights? I know Mayweather did. I think he ducked Pacquiao basically till Pacquiao was too old, and he took advantage of, I think, fighting Canelo when he was super young and inexperienced. And I don't think he fought anyone else that was that high profile. But yeah, is there a reason you didn't include those two guys here?
Well, Floyd Mayweather's nickname is money. So he's all about the money. Clearly, that Manny Pacquiao fight was delayed for money. I didn't list him just because, I can't keep talking about everybody I hate. But maybe I can. I don't know. I'm not an angry person. But Floyd Mayweather did delay that Pacquiao fight. It happened like 4 or 5 years later than it should have. And I'd always picked him to win, but that's neither here nor there. But he did fight good fighters. He fought Miguel Cotto, who was a legendary Puerto Rican fighter. He fought Shane Mosley. He does have a good resume. Canelo Alvarez is an incredible notch on his belt for sure. Khabib is considered to be up there as an all-time great. I don't think he beat enough elite fighters. He's obviously, his peak is difficult to say anyone can break his peak. But I just listed some other fighters just because they were just, I feel like he left more on the table. I think there was just more fights out there for him, but I don't think he wanted to do it anymore for whatever reason, whether he saw that his body couldn't hold up or whatever the case may be. I thought he retired too early.
His reasoning was that his dad passed and he didn't want to fight without his dad, I think, or didn't. I don't know.
A man of nobility. What can we say?
The guy has principles. We'll say it's not like it came out of nowhere. This isn't.
He sure does. He tried to kick someone's ass after the fight was over again. Like, that dude is like, do not say anything about me or my family. He's like Liam Neeson in real life as like a fighter. Like, he'll come find you. He won't forget about it. He's a vindictive man of who fears God.
That's a good way to put it, for sure.
So in terms of, and I have one more example that's just funny. I mentioned Amanda Nunez just for the sake of equality here. I'll listen to a female who's in it for the money. And this is Paige Van Zandt, who is a female fighter. She fought for the UFC. She only went 6-4. She didn't beat anyone good. Obviously not a good record. But she capitalized on it and had modeling opportunities and took promotions and things like that. But as soon as she started losing fights, like they didn't renew her contract, and she fights for like the bare knuckle league or something like that.
Would you throw Ronda Rousey in there too? Who I think once she lost, it was like her first loss, and then she decided, I'm just going to do Fast and Furious movies and WWE. Would you throw her in there?
I think it ran its course. She was an Olympian who don't get punched in the face. Olympians are grappling and things like that. Kind of like Brock Lesnar,
Olympian in judo or something, right?
She was a judo Olympian. So she's like, tossing and throwing people around and putting them in arm bars, which was exactly what she did. Like, that was like, she was the best in the world at flipping someone over with a hip toss and putting them in an arm bar. Ronda Rousey, trailblazer. She's the reason why women fight in the UFC. Dana White, who has said X will never happen several times, and then it happened. This was one of those things where he said a woman will never fight in the UFC, and then the money was there, and guess what, Baldy? There's women fighting.
Dana White, serial truth bender. That's a good way to, will be nice.
Serial
liar. We'll just call him serial liar. We don't have to sugarcoat it.
There's a more recent example. I don't want to lose sight of this, where this is another category that I think is, and it's really interesting to use this with fighting. Francis Ngannou, heavyweight champion of the UFC, left the UFC because he's like, look, you're not paying me what I'm worth. I'm the heavyweight champion. I'm the big kahuna in this company, and you're offering me nothing. And this is known about the UFC, but this is someone that walked away from the only organization where there's clout, where the best fighters are. It's like leaving the NBA or something. And I'm going to go find another place to play. And it worked out for him because he's fighting Tyson Fury, who's the best heavyweight in the world, in a couple of months. And that became a big payday. So I think that's a unique category of, I'm not getting what I'm worth, and I'm great, and I'm going to go seek glory elsewhere. I think that's a cool way to be about the money.
Yeah, it's a new challenge because he's going from, MMA to boxing, and we all know that there's just so much more money in boxing if you have the name, if you have the clout, if you have the talent. So yeah, I don't I don't begrudge him that opportunity. It's too bad. I do want to see him fight John Jones and some of these other guys in the UFC, but kind of is what it is. That makes sense. You got to take the money while you can, and the new challenge again.
Yep. And I think when fans look at this, fans are going to be, volatile in how they feel about the winning and the money, especially. I think in general, this topic, if you talk about it the wrong way, it sounds like people are calling into a radio show and complaining about, well, A-Rod's bankrupting the team, things like that. But I want to get into some categories here. And if you have I have a top 5 list. But we can get into some of that stuff. What say you? Do you have anything you want to add before we just start name dropping here?
I think there's guys, what I seem to usually appreciate is some self-awareness, right? I like guys that are aware. They don't they buy into the mythology of sports in general a little bit, because I think we all do. And that's why, you and me are sitting here talking about this, and the fact that we have a sports podcast. And I think a lot of our hobbies and interests around sports is because of the mythology around sports. If we just boiled it down to, it's just a sport, it's just a game, then we wouldn't be as interested. But I think at the end of the day, for a lot of these guys, it really is just about paying the bills. It's not any different than someone that was blessed with an amazing singing voice. Like, I might not really like to sing, but this is my God-given talent. So I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to use that to pay the bills, and I'm going to use that as my job. And a guy that came to mind, again, when you sent me this topic, was a player that played for Tottenham in the Premier League in, I want to say, like the mid-2000s, early 2010s, Cameroonian guy named Benoit Asuakato. So he was asked about, playing for the badge and, his love for Tottenham and the club and all that. And he gave a really thoughtful answer. I'm going to read it. He said, I've never bought into the hypocrisy of football, but perhaps I'm more strident in my views now. I'm lucky and appreciate what I have, but football is just a job, a means to an end. There are more important things in life than kicking a ball around. Like, wow, okay, cool, bro. Way to just shit on everything everyone's doing here. But he says, yes, I play for money, but then doesn't everybody who gets up in the morning and goes to work? Yeah. They do it to provide for their family. He said, it infuriates me when footballers go on and on about playing for the shirt. I think they should be held accountable for it when they kiss the badge and 6 months later clear off for a better payday. So I think he touches on a lot of things here, right? It's the mythology of, and I want to say kind of the delusion that we have about guys playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not on the back. And they prioritize that, and they kiss the badge. I'm wearing a soccer jersey right now. And, that's a very common celebration. It's like, I love this club more than, life itself. So I'm going to score a goal, and I'm going to kiss the badge and do all that. But, if someone came in, a better team came in with an offer 6 months later, they're probably going to take that, no matter how much they love and want to kiss the badge. So it is true. There's a lot of hypocrisy around here. Around that topic, and I think his the awareness that he showed in making this statement. It pissed a lot of people off because they're like, no, these guys should care more because it's not just a regular job. No one has posters of their favorite accountant on the wall. No one's wearing a jersey with their favorite doctor's name on the back. But just like he said, at the end of the day, it's a paycheck. And that's why some of these guys do it. Obviously, they love to play the game. They prioritize it. They work hard to do it. But sometimes it really is just, it's not a 9 to 5, but it's something just to pay the bills. It's just taking advantage of your God-given talents and abilities. So
it's interesting. It's a great example. I actually thought of this in a different way long before I thought about it from a sports aspect. When I think about Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro, one of the great actors of the last 60 years. He's made classic after classic, Academy Award winner, etc. If you look at his catalog after he made, I don't know, like Casino or something, there's just like a run where he made a bunch of comedy movies. He just wasn't a very serious person in his movies. He made like 3 Fokker movies and Bad Grandpa and Analyze This and Analyze That. And he just compiled like a list of movies that kind of hinder the resume. They dilute the quality of his resume a little bit. But these are just one of those, I'm just paying the bills. Like, I'm just going to keep making movies to pay the bills. They don't all have to be Scorsese crime mob epics. But when he wants to, he can go in and still put on an amazing performance in The Irishman. There's a cool movie, another Scorsese movie coming out in a few months. Apple. We need to do a podcast about Apple taking over the film industry, but that's
the sports documentary industry. They got the Steph Curry one coming out in a couple of days. So
yeah, that's exciting. So like De Niro, I just saw that and it made me think, like, who's somebody in sports that clearly very great, because De Niro was great, clearly very great, but is doing this to keep paying bills. And it could be for a number of reasons, right? Like, obviously, you just need to maintain your lifestyle. And for me, this is like a combination of both. It's Evander Holyfield, who was one of the best heavyweight boxers of all time. He's probably top 10. He fought a number of world title holders. He fought, like, I think over 20 guys that had won a title. He was a warrior, and his style of fighting was crazy. He always would trail off from the game plan and get into these freaking violent wars with guys like Riddick Bowe and George Foreman and Lennox Lewis. It was hilarious. But his spending habits were insane. So, for example, he ordered a house with 109 rooms in about 1994. So obviously, when you're asking for a house that has more rooms than probably, I don't know, the Burj Khalifa, it's an insane number of rooms for a house. Of course, he went bankrupt. He had 11 kids from 6 different women. That didn't help out. He fought into his 50s. He fought one more time in his 60s against Vitor Belfort. That fight shouldn't have even sanctioned. But it's very clear that Evander Holyfield needed boxing to pay the bills. Money was just simply his motivation.
I gotta ask, what is it about boxers that just attracts this type of personality where they're just spending money faster than they can make? I feel like more than any other sport, I mean, maybe not, but just anecdotally, it feels like more than any other sport, these guys are that's just what they're known for. Just making a ton of money, spending more than they have, and then again having to fight, into their 40s, 50s, I guess even 60s in Holyfield's thing. What is it about these boxers, man?
Well, boxing by nature is, it traffics in corruption. And these were the first athletes to really get paid. It was the most popular sport in the world in the 30s, right? Like, there was not much else going on, and you could listen to boxing on the radio in any language across the planet. So naturally, you had guys like Don King who will just put a suitcase on the table in front of Muhammad Ali with $1 million in it and go, "This is it. What do you think?" And it could be way less than he deserves. But I think that the support system around boxers back in the day was just so different than it is now. You don't really see boxers in financial trouble anymore because they are more self-aware of the value of the sport. And I think they've just seen guys like Holyfield and elsewhere struggle with this.
So it's like the lack of transparency around how much money you're actually making.
Yeah, and you'll see even like basketball players say they'll have to go to younger guys on their team and go, look, this is going to be really crazy, really fast. Here's the best way to go about it without going bankrupt because you got an okay rookie
Hmm.
contract.
Yeah, I think Shaq at one point he said, I made $1 million, so I spent $1 million, but I didn't realize that I actually only made 600K or 500K or whatever after everything else that came up. So yeah, I guess it's not. I mean, it's definitely not just boxers that are these lavish spenders, but maybe it's just the type of person boxing attracts because you have to be you have to have a couple screws loose to decide I want to get punched in the face for a living. You
Right,
know,
right.
so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the new category here, just hop in jobs is the name of this
This is the
category.
Gen Z.
And
I'm going to spend 1 year at a tech company at a time and boost my salary every time category.
yeah, yep. And everyone here is pretty much a millennial. So this is very applicable. Maybe it's just me and my age. There's probably other people, but for the sake of our listeners, these are just easy, recent examples to follow. So, top of the list here, I actually want to lead off with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who's one of my favorite players. Zlatan, giant 6'4", 6'5" striker, black belt taekwondo, scary man, very good at soccer. But he doesn't give a shit about who he plays for. He's played for everybody. He's played for Ajax, Barcelona. He's played for Inter Milan, AC Milan, LA Galaxy. He's played everywhere under the Manchester United. Like he's played everywhere, deservedly so because he's a great player. But he'll also just leave for the hell of it. Doesn't matter what status the team is at. They could win the title. He's like, yeah, I'm out. Like because I'm all about Zlatan.
He's a perfect example of this. It's just, and he's probably in like the upper echelon of this because he's so damn good. It wasn't just I'm here to pay the bills and just kind of go about my business. It's very clear he cares about his craft. I mean, you don't play until you're 40 at a sport like this without caring, without putting in the work off the field, or at least off the actual game field. So yeah, he's top of the list here for sure.
Now, another one I have here, James Harden. James Harden might put on a fat suit really soon again to leave Philadelphia. He's, the fat suit stuff. This Brooklyn situation's weird. I'm out of here. He took a discount so that Philly could do some stuff for him, but he's like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it anymore. I'm not cool with Daryl Morey anymore. I want to leave Philly too. And after being in Houston for so long, now he just wants to just jump around. He's like, I'm not happy here. I'm not happy here. I'm gonna twist everyone's arm until I'm somewhere else.
I think he's confused. I think he's confused about what he wants. I think he wants the best of both worlds, right? Because in Houston, he made a ton of money. They got close. They probably should have beaten the Warriors one of those Chris Paul years. They just, the ball didn't bounce their way. They got in some bad injury luck, and they weren't able to do that. And I think his move to Brooklyn was motivated by winning. I don't think that was a money move. And I think that his current move was a little bit of both. And I think he could have just opted out in Philly. But now he's like, well, I want to make up for the money that I passed on. The $15 million, made this huge deal about it. In the fact that he took a discount, quote unquote discount, to come back to Philly. It's like you could have just opted out and played for, I don't know, the mid-level exception with the Lakers if you really wanted to win, or gone to Miami. I don't know. Like there's a million things you could have done other than opting into his $35 million a year contract and then wanting to get traded. So I think he's confused. He's definitely a lifestyle guy because we know he's a legendary partier in the annals of NBA history.
Yeah.
And I think he's just confused because he wants to win, but he also wants to stay up all night at a strip club and show up to training camp out of shape. And I think he overestimates his worth at the same time because he's a great player, but he's not a great player when it counts. So I think he's just like a walking contradiction. And yeah, he's definitely in this list for me.
Yep. Yep. All well said. Next up here on the just hop in jobs list, Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving. And I don't think in a bad way. I just think Kyrie Irving is in some degrees misinterpreted or overblown in terms of coverage because, and this is my opinion, I'm sorry for anyone that's a Boston fan, he just pissed off a lot of Boston people. And there's a very prominent people in media. I could be wrong about that. If I am, sorry, not sorry. Either way, I think just wherever he plays now, it just runs its course out. Like whether it's Cleveland, they were like, just get out of here. Boston, we'll see you later. Brooklyn, get all the way the hell out of here. I think this is just where a guy that, even as good and talented as he is, it isn't about the money. It's just he's one of those like where you see it's a great looking resume and he just keeps jumping around.
I'm going to disagree with you here. I think that listen, I think he wants you to think it's not about the money. I think that's what I love Kyrie. He seems like a good dude with a big heart, but he definitely wants you to think it's not about the money because he had an opportunity a couple of summers ago to opt out of his Brooklyn contract and sign, again, somewhere else. Very similar to James Harden, where he could have signed with the Lakers for, I think, exactly the mid-level exception, played with AD and LeBron, probably won a title because they were right there at the cusp of it this year, and he chose to opt in. He couldn't say no to the $30 million on the table, and he's doing the same thing. He's wanted a long-term deal with Brooklyn, again, motivated by money, which is fine. They wouldn't give it to him without some crazy incentive, so he said, all right, I'm out of here. So he wants you to think it's not about the money. He wants you to think that he's motivated by, I don't know, the vibes, the whatever you want to call it, it just doesn't feel right here. I'm just looking for the best situation for my mental health, whatever. It's like, no, man, it's just at the end of the day, it's about the money. That's why you stayed in Brooklyn. That's why you wanted out of Brooklyn. That's why you're staying in Dallas. It's like at this point in your career, no one would be mad if you turned down a bunch of money and just kind of, ring chased at this point. But he's just not about that. It's about he wants to make the money while he can. And that's fine. Again, that's fine. Just don't try to fool me and pretend like it's something else.
And now he's hopping jobs. I think the nobility part there is not as, I agree with the taking the money in Brooklyn part. You know who had the balls to do this? Khabib. Khabib absolutely would have taken the mid-level exception on the Lakers if he was in Kyrie's shoes just for the it would have been Khabib. All right. Next one here. This one's a funny one. And it's funny that these guys are all teammates. Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant plays wherever the hell he wants. He's like, you know what Kevin Durant is like? He's like if Steve Jobs just went from company to company in Silicon Valley and just killed it while he was there. He's like, I'm going to go to Intel, and Intel goes up in value. I'm going to go to Dell. Oh man, Dell is awesome. He's just going everywhere, and he's like the most valued employee there, and he's amazing everywhere he goes. But he just does whatever the hell he wants. He's just hopping jobs.
Is Steph Curry the Steve Wozniak in this metaphor, where he's like the real mastermind? He just doesn't get nearly enough credit for what he did. It's like, well, this is Steve Jobs' company. He showed up in the black turtleneck, and he's the idea guy. He's the eccentric. But who's the real mastermind? Steph Curry. No, I totally agree. I don't know what he's motivated by. I don't think it's legacy. I know he's a hoop head and he's a hoop historian. I think he cares and loves basketball because, he had the ultimate winning situation. If it really came down to winning and just winning, he would have stayed in Golden State. He won 2 titles fairly easily. Probably could have won a couple more. Obviously could have won a couple more if they were able to win one without him. So if it was just about money, he would have stayed there. And I think it's really hard to put a finger on what he wants. Is it wanting your own team? So it is kind of motivated by legacy, but also he's not ashamed of being traded a bunch of times, which is not something that great players usually do, and is definitely a stain on his legacy. The fact that, he's tried to create 2 other super teams and has failed so far. So I don't know. I don't know what his ultimate motivation is, because he's definitely making a lot of money along the way, but I wouldn't say he's in the, I'm all about the bag category. So he's somewhere in between.
Yep. He's just hopping jobs. The resume looks good. It's got a lot of companies on it. He puts his stats on there. Hit quota club every time. President's Club. Good stuff. Employee of the month several times. Last one on the I'm just hopping jobs list is Cristiano Ronaldo. And Cristiano Ronaldo, I know I made fun of the Saudi Arabia thing, but he was hopping jobs long before that. So he'd had a good stint in Real Madrid. I'm not going to discredit what he did there. He had an incredible run, prolific Champions League achievements. He was great there. And then he started hopping jobs. He went to Italy. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to do this crazy freaking 50% income tax in Spain. Go to hell. Goes to Italy, does nothing there. Leaves Italy. And recently, actually, funny, we're putting him here now, said he was the reason why people went to Italy. Nobody went to Italy. It's just about him. He made it about him. Goes to Manchester United. Nothing happens there. They put him on the bench. Game over. Now he's in Saudi Arabia making $200 million a year or $100 million a year, whatever it is. And now he's also taking credit for that because he's just about himself. And now at this point in his career, he's just hopping jobs. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't say he didn't do anything in Italy. He had some big time Champions League moments. There was one, I think it was a hat trick against Atletico in the second leg in the quarters or something like that. They never won the Champions League, but he did some things there. Even Manchester United, like he kind of dragged them through the Champions League for 1 or 2 years. But it got to the point where the headache of dealing with this dude's ego just wasn't worth it anymore. And I think that's was ultimately his downfall. It's just, when you are 36, 37, you're not able to perform week in, week out. You're not doing all the little things. You're going to score goals, but you're not doing any of the other stuff that teams value and teams need. So I don't know if I would put him in this category quite because he is a serial winner. He is all about the winner. He's insane. He's going to be in shape until the day he dies, and he's going to always have probably like be buried with a 6-pack type dude. So he definitely cares. He definitely puts in the work. He's probably one of the hardest working guys. He just also happens to have like this Jupiter-sized ego that he drags around with him. So I don't know. I think he's motivated by looking good and also playing well. But yeah, so he's kind of in. I don't know if I put him in this hop.
Maybe he's a member of. I'm now hopping jobs now, and also the founding member of the ego club.
Yeah.
My ego is more important than everything else club.
Exactly.
It's I'm more important than everything club.
And that's okay when you're 30 and you're scoring 60 goals in a league season and you're winning Champions League titles. Like I won 5 Champions League titles, or 4, I think, with Real. So he's a winner. He is definitely a winner. It just gets to the point where the math doesn't add up anymore. The ego isn't worth the contribution that he's bringing. So the ego club, sure, he's in the ego club.
Yeah.
He is the ego club.
This is a guy who his team would win a game, but if he didn't score, he'd be furious. Like it was just all about him all the time.
It's a sociopathic drive. It's an insane drive that he plays with, sometimes to the detriment of his team, but more often than not through his career was definitely to the benefit of his team. I sympathize with him.
Fair
I don't
enough.
know if you can tell.
I think I just hate the Saudi Arabia move more than anything. That might be what's clouding my judgment here.
He should have came to MLS, but I think he wasn't getting $200 million a year like his boy Messi. So,
like the only place you can watch him is on that ESPN FC dreadful Twitter account. Like there's nowhere else you could watch him. It's fucking stupid. Anyway, we'll have one more list here because I love lists. I'm obsessed with lists, and this is just my top 5 for this podcast of hilariously in it for the money in different ways. So
I can't wait for this one.
This first one is a freaking doozy. Number 1 on the top 5 list of guys that are in it for the money. Well, you know what? Let me go reverse order here because number 1 is a freaking doozy. Number 5, Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, this guy clearly does not give a shit about anything at all. Like nothing. He doesn't care about talking, doesn't care about winning. I don't even know if he cares about, I guess the only thing he can kind of care about is money, just a tiny bit, but he has to be at home in LA. Like he didn't want to play in San Antonio anymore. after playing for like a pristine organization. He's like, get me the hell out of here. It's like, okay, go play in Toronto in the cold. Go to hell. Wins a title there, to his credit, in Toronto. He's the first player ever to win a title and just leave. Ever. He's the first player to win a title and say, see ya, and not resign, especially a player of his quality. Goes to the Clippers, like holds out the free agency market at the time. The Lakers are like waiting for this freaking guy. He waits till everybody gets signed because the Lakers are trying to make room for him. The market dries up. He makes the Clippers give away everything to form the injured reserve club. But he gets to play in LA where he grew up, and that's it. It doesn't give a shit about anything.
Listen, man, this guy is living the dream. That's all I got to say. He's living at home. He's in his hometown. He's surrounded by family and friends. He works, I don't know, once a month, and he's making $100 million a year from New Balance and the Clippers and whatever else. He gets
New Balance.
Yeah, he's making commercials with Jack Harlow on the weekends. He's just hanging out. He's already got his 2 titles. He was established as the best player in the league for, I don't know, 2 months. And then he just said, you know what? I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to chill and do me. So I kind of have to admire the Kawhi Leonard approach to life. But yeah, the thing is, he doesn't say anything. So we don't know what he wants. We just have to like read into the actions and kind of read between the lines and the tea leaves and this and that and just kind of like assume what he's thinking. So he's really smart in that regard. It's like, if you don't say anything, no one is going to have a real opinion about you. People might hate you, but it's like, it's not real hate. Like, no one hates Kawhi like they hate Kyrie in Boston. You know what I'm saying? No one in the Clippers is like, man, this guy screwed us over, blah, blah. It's just like, yeah, it's just Kawhi. You just got to shrug your shoulders. And he's just like one of the all-time eccentrics in the NBA, just by virtue of like just having a weird laugh and not saying anything for 10, 15 years, whatever. So he's got it good.
He did, since he doesn't say anything, I'll speak for him. Doesn't give a shit. All right. Next up on the list, Latrell Sprewell. Now, Latrell Sprewell, people might not know why he's on this list exactly, but he's on this list for something very specific. But first, I believe he punched PJ Carlesimo in the face.
He choked him.
And then came back to practice. Choked him. Choked him.
Which is somehow
left the facility, came back, and then attacked him again. Right after he was asked to leave, he came back, attacked him again, and then he left. He was a good player, but he was high profile because he played for the Knicks and he was a little troublesome. But he got paid, and we talked about the T-Wolves being assholes earlier. They gave him a $21 million contract. And he said, this isn't enough to put food on the table. Now, I wouldn't fault anyone for being mad at how much they were getting paid. But to make $21 million and say specifically, very specifically, that this is not enough money to put food on the table is asinine. And that's why he's on this list.
It's a stunning lack of self-awareness. And again, I have to kind of appreciate it. Just the sheer, just the lack of self-awareness to make a statement like that with that contract. So good for you, Latrell.
And he did proceed to go into bankruptcy after that. With the cherry.
Boom!
Yeah. Shakalaka.
Sounds about right.
He's on fire. All right. Next up on the list is Neymar. Neymar is on this list purely for his decision-making. He went to Barcelona as the hottest prospect in the world, won a Champions League. He was teammates with Messi and Luis Suarez. And he's like, you know what, guys? I don't really want to play here anymore. I want to be the guy in Paris. And he's been doing nothing else since then. They had one Champions League finals appearance, but he just went and got a big payday and Nike sponsorship. And that's someone who left a winning situation that wanted to be the guy. He wanted to win the Ballon d'Or. And I don't think he ever got in top 3 Ballon d'Or voting. It just never worked out for him. It was a terrible decision for a payday.
There's some like KD parallels here, maybe some Kyrie you know what? Actually, when this happened, when he left Barcelona to go to Paris, I think in my mind, the clear parallel was Kyrie. It's like, LeBron is Messi or Messi is LeBron. He's always going to be second fiddle. It's always going to be LeBron's team. And he kind of wanted to leave the shadow of LeBron and win in his own situation. And I don't fault him for taking the payday in Paris. I think he was motivated by their vision. Their vision has always been, we're going to build this world-class team with a bunch of money and we're going to win the Champions League. And I think he bought into that vision. And I think it was kind of the double, he took advantage of that ability to not just get paid, but have your own situation and go to a good team. It's not like he went to, the Shanghai Sharks or something like that, or to China to play for a big payday. Still, it's a top 5-6 league in Europe. They're always in the Champions League. They're always in the mix. So I don't know. I wouldn't put him quite in this category. I think he was motivated a little bit by personal glory as well. And the money just happened to be a byproduct of playing basically for for Qatar and all the money that they have.
My choice is absolutely clouded by I'm a Barcelona fan and hated that he left.
I should have led with that, honestly. I thought about that as you were starting. I was like, you know what? Oh, there's a little bit of bias here, but it's okay. I'll let it go.
Well, there should be. There should be some bias here. All right, number 2 on this list. We've talked about him plenty. Floyd Mayweather. And this is where it gets really high profile. Floyd Mayweather is fighting Logan Paul now, and he fought the John Gotti, the gangster's son, or
John Gotti Jr.
or third grandson,
some kind of exhibition fight.
Something stupid. Yeah, he's taking these stupid exhibition fights with people who don't belong in the ring with this guy. And he's doing it for the money, and he's the worst person in sports, and that's why he's number two on the list.
He is, but he's a genius. I think he realized
completely.
Yeah, he realized the value of his name. He's a branding, marketing genius. I work out at a Mayweather gym, and he's gone out of his way he's basically franchised this boxing and fitness brand. He has, I think, very little to do with it, but his name and his face is all over it. And it's just an incredible branding play. It's just go work out like Floyd Mayweather. And they're all about the 50 and 0. They have T-shirts of, join the 50 and 0 club. It's all about the branding. And he's so smart because he knows that my name means something. I might not be at the top of my sport anymore, but I'm going to take these stupid exhibition fights, make a bunch of money, and just, I'm just going to stay in shape and do this. There's no real danger to my legacy if I do happen to get knocked out by Jake Paul or whatever. Not that that's going to happen, but yeah, he is Money Mayweather for a reason, and he's a branding, marketing genius, but he definitely belongs on this list. And I'm surprised he wasn't number 1, but I think you have a surprise for us at number 1.
Yeah, and I think Floyd Mayweather did something very smart in his marketability, where he said, look, I know none of you like me, and I have this undefeated record, and you want me to lose. You want to see me lose? Buy this fight, and maybe I'll lose, maybe I won't. It was very smart. All right, number 1 on this list. I went way off the board here. This guy probably, if you isolate, you already know who it is because you can see the list, but if you isolate his actual time as a player, it probably isn't worthy of this spot. But Brett Favre, given that Brett Favre defrauded the people of Missouri for some sort of volleyball program for millions of dollars, makes him the most despicable, in it for the money, piece of shit asshole in the history of sports. Brett Favre is just terrible, man. From Wrangler jeans to pictures of let's just say nether regions,
of baby Brett, mini Brett.
Nothing to do with money. We're just I'm just compiling. Yeah, I don't even really need to, but just the worst, man. He's the freaking worst.
It's remarkable. And Copperfit is the other one that he does. He does the commercials with Jerry Rice where they're playing flag football. Those are always great. He's always playing football in his commercials, which makes sense, right? He's playing football in Wrangler jeans, or he's playing football with a Copperfit knee brace. Just his whole personality for 20 years in the NFL was just this aw shucks country boy, I just love to play football. It's all I care about is football. He had this drawl, and he was really likable. And then, but there was like a lot going on behind the scenes that people don't really talk about. He had like the painkiller addiction. He had the pictures of Mini Brett that he was sending to a reporter that looked suspiciously like his wife. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of them side by side. So it's a very weird situation. Very attractive Jets sideline reporter or something like that, but looked a lot like Mrs. Favre maybe 20 years prior. And then, of course, the crimes that he's committed since defrauding the welfare state. Like we were talking about Paul Pierce and like how he's done more to hurt his legacy by not committing a crime than anybody else in sports. Well, Brett Favre has committed crimes, and I think he's up there with one of the guys that has hurt his legacy and reputation more than any other athlete in recent memory, for sure.
This is a guy who was not only in it for the money, he was in it for other people's money. He's a complete criminal. And he's the winner here of the list of guys in sports in it for the money. I know that Neymar was on the list. I hate him. But hey, I'm not a journalist. I'm just here talking shit.
Brett Favre, scumbag of the highest order. So.
Scumbag, elite, world-class scumbag Brett Favre, who defrauded the people of Missouri for some sort of fraudulent volleyball program. All right. Well, that wraps it up on our philosophical conversation about money versus winning. That went into a lovely, meat-headed conversation about very specific people. But thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. We do a lot of sports history stuff and topical stuff here at 4040. Top 5 what ifs. We do look backs on legacies. We do redrafts. So please subscribe. Go back. You can listen anytime. The content is evergreen. Subscribe to YouTube podcasts like Spotify and Apple. I love Overcast. It's perfect for podcasting. And we'll see you again real soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.